gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new season. We are here for a brand new season of the F1 journey, and it looked like it was never going to happen, with lots of financial issues within the hierarchy of the Formula 1 paddock, and also with issues with boycottings of Grand Prix as well, and managerial structural changes within the hierarchy of Formula 1. It looked like the season would not go ahead, but the season is now officially back, and we can get ready to go ahead and start a new season of Formula 1. With the massive delay and with all of the complications here and about, it gave the teams and drivers an opportunity to sit back, relax, and spend extra time developing their car as they head into the brand new season. So without further ado, let's have a look and see what the teams and drivers have come up with. The first team to break to the track was Mercedes-Benz, and with testing being extremely private this season, we weren't actually able to film any of the actual live testing. However, we did manage to get an opportunity to go out there in a special version of each of the cars and have a crack with them with their new liveries on. The only thing that we were not eligible to get from the teams themselves was the official numbers printed onto the cars. So we had to go ahead and basically just print numbers and just stick them on the cars. So our test driver is round the track at the moment, as you can see with your footage right now, and he's popped the number 90 on. However, we've had to use some old versions of numbers to put on the cars, as we're not eligible to put the official numbers on just yet. Anyway, Mercedes-Benz have had some major issues with engine power in pre-season testing, and it's something that they're going to be working on all season. However, they have made some massive improvements to the chassis and the aero. They still look to be up there at the top of the field. However, it may be a struggle, especially on a straight line. The biggest shock came from the actual pre-season transfer window session. Now, obviously, it was recent Esteban Ocon that were driving for Mercedes-Benz when it came towards the start of the season, and it looked to stay that way. However, just before testing began, Mercedes-Benz dropped Esteban Ocon, and they decided to rehire Tom back into their team. Now, of course, if you do remember from the last season, Tom was saved basically from exiting Formula 1 by Mercedes, and he stated then that he would obviously leave Mercedes at the end of the year, as obviously he wasn't a Mercedes driver, so he was going to leave, go somewhere else, and reignite his career. However, for some reason, Mercedes have now decided to bring him back, and it has brought a massive shock to the paddock, as especially now Mercedes are already under scrutiny for not using their young drivers, and now of course they've just gone ahead and ditched Ocon, who was one of their young drivers, and it's put them in a lot of trouble with questions breathing down their necks, so we will have to find out if any of those are going to get answered. Moving on to Ferrari, and they arrived at pre-season with a little bit of a concern about their car. Now, overall, Ferrari was showing a very well-balanced car, which was a positive sign for the Scuderia. However, despite the fact that their car was extremely well-balanced, they were really lacking in just overall pace. Despite the fact that in the speed traps they weren't the slowest, and through the corners, they seemed to have a very well-balanced car that just stuck to the road and didn't look like it was hard to handle. It just didn't actually prove to have that much pace, and it's something that's a concern for the team, and something that they believe may take them some time to actually find out where they're losing out, as of course, they just don't quite know, considering their car overall seems to be very, very well done. However, Nico Rosberg and Nico Hülkenberg, however, have got a little bit of a rivalry to settle, and that is as Rosberg is setting to give Hulk a hard time. Of course, just before the season was technically quote-unquote cancelled, Rosberg and Hülkenberg were getting a little bit heated between each other. However, now it's a fresh start, and they can go at it again, and hopefully this time try and keep things under control. Ferrari this season, they've got a tough job on their hands. They've got to keep their car under control and try and make sure that they find their weaknesses, and they've got to keep their drivers intact as well. Heading over to Red Bull now, and Red Bull were, as they arrived in testing, were in the same boat as Mercedes-Benz. Red Bull looked like they were having the same power issues with Mercedes. However, through the corners and the aero department, everything was all well with Red Bull. They seem to be very, very competitive on the long runs, and also in terms of their qualifying pace in comparison to Mercedes as well. Red Bull do believe it's going to be a very, very difficult season for them. However, they do expect to beat Mercedes, and have actually set themselves a target that they must beat Mercedes this year in order to make it a success. Red Bull believe they've got the pace over Ferrari. However, they still feel there's some teams that they won't be able to compete with. Despite that, though, they still have a high chance of scoring some really good points. Also, on that note, in terms of the power unit side of things, they are already working on a brand new engine. Of course, the problem for Red Bull last time out, before the season cancelled itself out, was of course the power unit wasn't quite up to standards, and now they've been doing a lot of work, and now they'll be able to introduce an engine during this season, whereas it would have had to have been for the following season. It's a positive sign ahead for Red Bull as they go alongside with George Russell and Pascal Wehrlein. Now, Porsche arrived to pre-season testing with a lot of high hopes heading into the new season. Before the season started, or should we say season 3 part 1, or whatever you'd like to say it, they had a little bit of an issue whereby Force India were not allowing anyone to buy their team until the season had ended. Porsche then struggled to get a car ready for that time as they didn't know if they were going to win in terms of their overall bidding. However, they managed to do so, and of course they were into Formula 1. But now the season has been delayed, they've had a little bit of extra time to develop their car. They still look pretty good, however, and they're confident with their front-running drivers of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. However, they still believe that they've got work to do on all fronts, and they need to work on that. Despite that, though, with the front-runners having some issues with their powertrain but still being fast, Porsche looking quick in a straight line, so it might just be that the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull get caught out by Porsche and their straight line speed, and it really could put them on the back foot heading into this new season. The same good fortunes, however, can't be said for BMW, and unfortunately for them, they just have not quite cracked the Formula 1 car just yet, and they are expecting to be at the back of the grid for the season. BMW admit that they've got a very long road ahead if they are to get back to, well, any form of ways that they were when they were last in Formula 1 in 2008, 2009, 10, and prior to that as well. And they've still got a long way to develop. BMW just admit that overall their car is just not well done in any single department, and they've just got a lot of work to do, which is fair to them. They finally admitted that they have got an issue with that, as last time around they didn't admit to it, but this time they have done. Valtteri Bottas, however, believes that BMW will be able to get them up the order quickly and has a lot of trust and faith in them. Of course, Bottas will be partnered alongside new rookie driver Nick de Vries. Now moving on to Renault, and this was probably the most interesting launch alongside Mercedes-Benz of the testing period. Of course, Renault have now signed on Esteban Ocon to replace Tom, obviously, as they basically did an effect unplanned switch. Daniel Ricciardo keeps his seat at the Renault team. However, they believe that Renault can actually fight against Mercedes and Red Bull at the top and try and give them a hard time and basically go for a three-way fight at the front. Renault also believe that Esteban Ocon was betrayed by Mercedes. Of course, Ocon was ditched by Mercedes late on and was replaced, and now of course Ocon has had to settle for Renault for this season, which maybe is what he wanted, but I presume that he would have loved to stay at Mercedes where he worked to actually get into Formula 1. Following from that as well, Ricciardo has backed Ocon to be a success at Renault and believes that his time at Mercedes would have only led to failure due to their preferences of other drivers. So this is going to be a very interesting time. I'm pretty sure the scraps between Renault and Mercedes are going to be very, very brutal between them all. And of course, not only on track, but off track as well. Jaguar were next to unveil their car heading into the brand new season. And overall for Jaguar, it was not actually that bad of a testing for them. They seem to be looking like a top midfield team from what they say anyway. Of course, Jaguar have been a little bit unreliable with actually stating exactly where they are. Now, they have said that they are, as they said, a top midfield team. But can we believe that? Well, it's kind of hard to know because there's been a lot of times where Jaguar have, well, lied about what they believe. However, in spite of that though, they are aiming for at least one podium this season. They've got Antonio Giovinazzi and Pierre Gasly to partner alongside each other to give that a little bit of a go. But obviously, there is still a little bit of balance issues with the car. They seem to be having a lot of struggles with understeer and also oversteer as well. So if they can try and get that sorted, whether that's just setup work or if they need to make a couple of upgrades to maybe some of the parts of the aerodynamics and the chassis to make it work, then they're in with a good shout. So Jaguar overall looking quite strong. Now Audi were next to rock up at the Circuit de Catalunya and they were ready for a battle, and for Audi, well, they have one major thing to look out for, and that's Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel being in the same car. Of course, we've seen the rivalry that they've had. Now all of a sudden they now need to try and keep them calm and collected, which is not going to be the easiest thing in the world. However, Audi, like Jaguar, are aiming for podiums this season. They do believe that they've got the car to do so, and they believe they have a car that is competitive enough to do exactly that, and they're looking forward to the season ahead. However, as we've stated before, obviously, the biggest thing that Audi could be looking at is trying to keep Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel calm. With the two of them being massive title rivals over the past few years, becoming teammates is a completely different scenario where not only are they going to be rivals on track trying to beat each other, but they're also going to need to work as a team in order to try and get the best for the team as well as themselves. It's going to be an interesting partnership and an interesting concept. I wonder if they're going to have a fallout, just like we nearly saw with Rosberg and Hulkenberg, which could still happen. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens between these cars and drivers. And now it was the turn of the mighty McLaren to come towards the Circuit de Catalunya, and it was a very, very interesting sight when first seeing the car. McLaren did have an initial orange and blue livery, but decided to change it up to a black and orange livery instead, and have gone with this now for the season. They are the only team alongside Mercedes-Benz to make a livery change heading into the season, with all the other cars obviously with the season now back underway again after so many problems with finances and boycotts and hierarchy problems. Well, they might as well just unravel their livery and carry on, but McLaren decided, nah, let's just go with something different like Mercedes. And unfortunately for the rest of the grid, the form that McLaren showed during the first half of the season when they put their new engine into the car has resolved itself, and they are back in form once again. Sam says that the car was an absolute joy to drive and it was absolutely loving it, and it was clear that by far McLaren were the quickest in testing. They were absolutely rapid, and it's going to be very, very difficult to stop this team in their tracks of potentially getting the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. It's going to be Sam Williams alongside Lando Norris, and it's going to be an interesting partnership. The two Brits are going to battle it head-to-head, with Sam jumping into his first season of F1, Lando Norris in his second season. Of course, he partnered alongside Stoffel Van Dorn the first time around, and now he has to face Sam, who he believes is going to be a tougher competition. And as stating that, Lando Norris has said it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Sam this year. However, of course, he still expects that he could do just that and give Sam a hard time. So it's going to be interesting between those two drivers, who's going to come out on top, but we've only got to find out very, very soon. And then finally it was Lamborghini to get themselves into Formula 1, and unfortunately for Lamborghini to start things off, it's not going to be the easiest start to the season. Just like BMW, they were struggling in testing. They just didn't quite get anything right. Just overall, the car was very, very slow, and it is something that they were aware of. However, both Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, who are going to be driving for the Lamborghini, remained optimistic about their chances within the team, and they said that although it's going to be a difficult start for them, they only see positive things going into the future. Lamborghini, obviously, like we said, with BMW, is struggling in testing, and Lamborghini have targeted any form of point score and finishes throughout the season, which would be a step forward for them. Now, BMW haven't said anything about upgrades yet. Lamborghini have. They've said that upgrades are not going to be an issue for their car. So in other words, Lamborghini, in terms of the spending that they can do for their car, it's not going to be an issue, which means Lamborghini are in with a very strong shout of actually getting further up the order compared to the likes of BMW, maybe even Porsche as well, and Jaguar, for an example, as they believe they have the resources to do just that for themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see where they start, which is probably at the back, and where they're going to end up. And that concludes it then for pre-season testing. Of course, it was very, very difficult for us to broadcast pre-season testing. In fact, obviously, as we stated, we weren't eligible to actually get any form of footage. No one was allowed to take any footage of this test, and it was obviously a very, very private one. But, of course, we managed to get a run with all of the cars and their liveries, just not with the official numbers, of course, as the teams decided that they did not want us to have that. But, of course, we're going to be returning for the season. It's going to be a shorter season, obviously, with it being cut off halfway through. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shorter season is going to pan out for the teams and also for the drivers as well. We're going to be kicking things off, though, at Bahrain for the first round of this new season, and only time will tell who is at the front of the field, who can challenge what we believe is going to be McLaren to get back to the top of the championship, and will Ferrari, who are reigning Constructors' Champions for 2 years in a row, find some pace. And obviously at the back of the field as well, Lamborghini, they say they've got upgrades coming. Porsche as well believe that they can do well later on in the season, so it's going to be very interesting, but we will see you guys very, very soon for the start of Season 3, the F1 journey. Peace.